How's everybody doing this morning?
Doing great. Sun's coming out. Maybe it'll be a nice day. We'll see. I don't know. Good
Everyone
morning,
get their
everybody.
coffee. Well, I am Ben Martin. I am the 5th Congressional Fellow, and Anthony, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself real quick. He's one of our other fellows.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Anthony Coyote, and I'm the organizing fellow for the 8th Congressional District.
And today we're going to be covering the chair training with the amazing Jeff Rose. Jeff is the chair of the County Chairs Association. So a real expert on this, a great source of knowledge. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. Either me and Anthony will get to you about them, or Jeff will cover them during one of the times where we can, kind of cover these questions within the presentation. But Jeff, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Thank you, Anthony, for both supporting this training, and thank you everybody for being here. I cannot possibly match the energy that we got from Julia in the opening session, but we're going to do our best to be as energized and as exciting as we can be about training around how to be an effective chair. We are going to focus mostly, when we talk about responsibilities in a little bit, we're going to talk mostly about county chair responsibilities, but there's a big section towards the end and in the middle of the training today where we're going to talk about strategic planning and how to get some good data for strategic planning and how to really execute that process effectively. And that'll apply no matter what organization you're a part of, because strategic planning is something we should all be doing in our organization. So we are going to get kicked off. Go to the next slide. So real quick, some Zoom housekeeping. I know some people kind of roll their eyes at these slides, but I was in a breakout room with somebody yesterday who it was her first Zoom meeting when we were on our breakout sessions last night. So important we make sure everybody is on the same page. So on the bottom of your window, you will see the controls that are on the screen here. So how to raise your hand, you would move your mouse down to the bottom of your screen, and you would look for that little smiley face, hit the reactions. And when you hit reactions, you'll see a little raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. Depending on what kind of device you're on, you might see it underneath a more menu, or you might have that box on the upper part of the screen. All different devices have the buttons in a different place, but most devices will have it on the bottom underneath reactions. So if you need to raise your hand for anything, that's how you would do it. And for folks who are here on the phone, I don't see anybody on the list who looks like they're participating by phone, but if you need to raise your hand on your telephone, you can press *9. That will raise your hand to us, let us know you have a question. And then if we need you to unmute, if you're on the phone, you would press *6, and you'll hear a little message from Zoom that you've been unmuted, and we'll be able to hear you. So just kind of ground setting for the meeting, as we do with all of our meetings of the state party, we want to make sure that in this training, in all discussions we have, that we're respectful of one another. If we have things that come up where we disagree, or when we get into question and answer, if folks have different, if two different counties have different opinions, or different people in the chat have different opinions about things, please be respectful of each other. And please also be present with us this morning. I know it's early. If you need to go get a cup of coffee or refill your cup of coffee or tea or something like that, please go ahead and do that. That's the beauty of Zoom, is you can shut your camera off and do that. But please try and be here with us. It's going to be more beneficial for you if you're present here with us. It'll be more beneficial for everyone else when you're engaging in conversation if you're present here with us today. Ask questions as we go. Please feel free to drop anything in the chat, as Ben said. And we're going to have a couple blocks where we'll pause and take questions live as well, and answer any questions that have come up in the chat. So please use the chat, go back and forth with each other, discuss things as we go, and please ask any questions you have, because now's the time for it. Okay, so we are going to get warmed up with a quick breakout room to talk about strategic planning. So in just a minute, you're going to see a little option pop up on your screen. If you were on the session last night, you got a little bit of practice with this last night. You're going to see a little pop-up show up on your screen. It's going to invite you to join a breakout room. We're going to split the group up. We've got 40 people here. So we'll split up into 10 groups. That'll give people time to get to know each other a little bit. So we want you to introduce yourself, talk to folks about what you want to, why you're here, and what you want to see for your county in your term or your district. And we also want everybody to answer the question, do you have a strategic plan? Because that's one of the main things we're going to talk about in this session today. So we're going to break out in just a minute, introduce yourself, get a chance to know some of the other folks that are in your Democratic family here on the training this morning. And if you have a strategic plan, say so. If you don't know what that means, you will by the end of this training. So I'm going to get us broken out. If you'll bear with me for just 1 second. And we're going to do 11 breakout rooms, 3 to 4 people per room. Okay. All right, so you should see a message up on your screen. Go ahead and click that button to join your breakout room, and we will come back together in a couple minutes.
They said 11 breakout rooms.
Oh, okay.
So
Hi,
I
Jeff.
don't know. Oh,
Yeah.
more people here. There we go. Hello.
Hey,
I'm
how you-
actually a precinct chair, but I still want to learn more.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Excited to have everybody here.
I don't have a plan yet, and that's why I'm here.
Perfect. What county are you from?
I'm 51 in Mecklenburg County.
Okay, great.
I'm Trisha Stevens. I'm from Iredell County. I'm the Democratic Women President. But I've actually been involved with the strategic plan for the county. I don't know, like 4 chairs ago. She had a committee, work on it.
Mhm.
And so I was on that committee.
Great.
But we're not sure what happened to it.
Yeah.
So
We'll talk about that.
yeah, because the new chair, she's just brought it up. And I'm like, there's one somewhere and she doesn't know where
Yeah.
it is. So
Yep, that's well, you got a puppy joining you.
yes.
It's a big challenge. A challenge we have with people potentially reinventing the wheel over and over again when we
Yeah.
have turnover in the officer positions. So, but that's good that they had a committee. So we'll talk about all the responsibilities of chairs. So I'm in Buncombe County, and we are in the process of revising our strategic plan. Our last one is from 2016. We didn't rewrite one in the last cycle, the last presidential cycle. So writing a new one for the post 45 world of how to get people more engaged and keep people staying engaged and active in the county. We had a big jump in participation. So we're trying to come up with some good goals that'll keep people focused on where to go from here. But I am going to actually bounce back to the main room. It looks like a couple other people have joined who didn't get assigned to rooms, and they're probably wondering what's going on. So
Okay.
I'm going to bounce back to the main room. It's
All
nice to
right.
meet you both.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, Ben,
Hey.
Catherine. I noticed we had a couple unassigned folks pop in, so I was popping back to the main room. So we'll give people about 3 more minutes.
It was fun because I would be talking to somebody and then you would just see them bloop, flip
Yeah.
away. That huge joy. And then Matt was like, oh my gosh, where is everyone? I was like, oh, we're in breakout room. He might be assigned. Bloop, and then just
Yeah, I think
hard
automatic
moving
assignment.
character.
automatic assignment tries to bump people into a room right away. So kind of cool stuff. Let me broadcast. And it's always scary when you have the controls.
Oh, yes.
That when you leave a breakout room and it says
End meeting for all.
it says end
And you're
meeting
like,
for
"No."
all or leave room, you're like, wait a minute. It always, so much trauma. I've accidentally ended Zoom meetings before when I didn't mean to. And it's no fun for anybody.
No, we were in a college dim meeting at App, and we had David Wilson Brown on whenever he was running. And so he was like giving the speech, and our president was trying to switch from her phone to her laptop. And whenever she logged on, she just left the meeting on her phone, and it ended it for everybody. And then she apparently sent like 3 emails to David Wilson Brown. She's like, join, please, please. So,
Well, it happens. It happens to the best of us. The more organizing you do, the more times that kind of stuff happens to you. All right, we have 1 more minute. We'll go ahead and end the rooms. Right, welcome back, Nancy. Okay, folks are going to start joining us again. 60 seconds, everyone will be back, and then we'll pick back up with our agenda. Welcome back, everyone. About 10 more seconds, everyone will be back with us, and then we'll keep going. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope y'all enjoyed having a few minutes to get to know each other a little bit, just to talk about why you're here, what you want to get out of the training, and also to talk about strategic plans. So show of hands, everybody want to give us an idea who has a strategic plan in their group, or has one, or at least knows there is one that you might be trying to update. Looks like we've got a couple counties that have got strategic plans or in the process of making strategic plans. Awesome. Counties can have strategic plans, districts can have strategic plans, affiliate organizations can have plans. We'll talk about why you want to have a plan in a few minutes. All right. So awesome. Glad everybody got a chance to meet each other. Let me close my couple things down on my screen. Want to just talk about expectations for another minute here before we jump in. We can go to the next slide. Yeah. All right. So we are our rough agenda for today. We have a couple other things that are in here that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about responsibilities of a chair are, talk about strategic planning, some things that you need to know for strategic planning before we dive into what they are. We'll talk about SMART goals because it's a very important part of a strategic plan, and we'll talk about what those are in a minute. And we'll talk a little bit about how the neighborhood cluster model can help you get to some of those pieces, help you build capacity. But before we get into all of the nitty gritty of how to actually make a strategic plan, how to do SMART goals, how to do all that other stuff, we'll talk a little bit about responsibilities of chairs. So our next slide is talking about what the responsibilities of county chairs are. The short answer is a lot, right? If we go to the next slide. We know there's a lot of things that happen in our counties, and this applies to districts too. There's a lot of things that happen, and you as the chair are the person who is kind of in the middle of all of that. You're not responsible for doing everything, but you are responsible for helping to make sure many of these things actually happen. So we all do a lot of things. We are the stewards of the party as we go through all those activities that we're talking about. The actual core responsibilities of a county chair, there's a big long list in the plan of organization that we've tried to distill down here into some points that make a little bit more sense than the legal language of the plan of organization. So you need to preside at meetings and conventions. So you need to actually be there, be the one running the meeting. You need to draft and execute the strategic plans that your county is making. And those are your county or district are making. And these rules, a couple of these apply specifically to counties, but some of them are universal across, even some of the state officer positions as well. So you need to draft and execute a strategic plan. The execute part is key. You need to manage your precincts. What does that mean? That means helping to make sure your precincts are organized, making sure they're effective, working with your other officers to make sure that's the case. And one of your key responsibilities as a county chair is to help organize those precincts. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. You're setting the date and times for annual meetings. This is your CEC meetings, your county executive committee meetings. You are the person who sets the time. You should talk to your other officers, but the plan gives you the responsibility of setting that. Same with the county convention and the precinct meetings. Your responsibility is to determine when those meetings will be in your county within the windows that the state party allots for us. And if you're a district chair, you're presiding and setting the dates for district conventions and district executive committee meetings. Appoint committees as necessary. So you can have as many committees as you want, but the chair is the person charged with appointing those committees and setting them up. So you can have committees around voter registration. You could have a committee around using Vote Builder. You could have a committee around digital organizing to help you do a little bit more on Facebook or social media, or an actual relational organizing committee. You can set those committees up as necessary. You're also charged with encouraging the formation of and supporting your local affiliated organization chapters. So there are a number of statewide affiliate organizations, and many of them are set up so that they can have county chapters or district chapters. And as chair, your responsibility, or one of your responsibilities, is to try and help support those organizations in your region. It's helpful for building our democratic coalition. As a county chair, you want to be a good member of your district. You want to attend the district meetings. You want to work with your district chair on district initiatives. And you just generally want to be a good member of the larger part of the party that you are in. You're the spokesperson for the county executive committee. So when your Democratic Party makes a decision, you are the person who's charged with communicating that to everybody. You're the person who carry that forward out into the community by representing the county, either in the media, which we'll talk about in a second, in other neighborhood groups, at the state level as a member of the state executive committee. So you're really representing your county. And I think that's an important point we'll hit on a couple times today, is that you're, as a county or district chair, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it as a representative of the Democrats in your area. For county chairs, you would also appoint a county attorney, which can be very helpful, helpful in just dealing with the Board of Elections, helpful in other things that come up. And then there's a catch-all in the plan of organization that says, and anything else deemed necessary. So you literally do everything else that you may need to do as a county chair. All right, next slide. Okay, we talked about organizing precincts a few minutes ago. So what does that actually mean? The plan of organization gives you some very legalese kind of definition of how you would appoint a temporary precinct chair for the purpose of organizing a precinct. But what does that actually mean? What is an unorganized precinct? So a precinct then is unorganized when it does not make quorum at an annual meeting. So that is, your annual precinct meetings. If they're unable to get 5 Democrats together and conduct all the business the plan requires, then they are not organized. So they can also be unorganized if everyone resigns, if all of the precinct officers quit. Then you don't have anyone in the precinct that's not organized anymore. They are not unorganized if they don't answer emails, or if they don't come to county meetings, or if they don't do some of the phone banking that you want the county to do. That doesn't mean they're unorganized. It just means that they're not functioning the way the county party wants them to function. So what should you do if you have an unorganized precinct? You should organize it. And that sounds really straightforward, but that's your role as the chair. So how would you do that? You can reach out to folks in the precinct who might be good Democratic voters. We're going to talk a lot about some data in a few minutes that you might be able to use. You could hold some events in that precinct. And you should also listen to other Democrats in your county and work as a team. You want to make sure that if you have members of an affiliate organization that are active in that precinct, if you have, or if it is a precinct that is, heavily populated by a constituency of an affiliate organization. So if you have a precinct that is very heavily African-American and you have an active African-American caucus, you can work with your African-American caucus to try and get more folks engaged in the work of the precinct. You really want to try and work with everyone you possibly can in your capacity as chair to make sure those precincts get organized. You can also consider an alternative plan of organization. We're not going to dive too deep into that, but there's a way in a plan of organization where, if you're in a county where there just are not Democrats in some precincts, that you can get active and engaged, you can consider making an alternative plan of organization, which would let you organize precincts into clusters. I know a couple of our counties who may be on the call today may have done that in the past. But the most important thing to do first is to try and listen to other Democrats in the county and work as a team. You don't have to do that just by talking about electing Democrats either. Especially in an area that's unorganized, the thing that might connect with people more is community issues. You want to talk about what the county or what people who live in that neighborhood might want to do, what they might care about. And then you can organize around those principles. So if there's a neighborhood that's not organized, but there's a new development going in somewhere, you might organize meetings, around that to talk about it with people. And through that kind of work, that regular, community organizing, people will get to meet each other, realize they're Democrats, and get involved in the party. So only the chair can appoint temporary precinct chairs, which means you need to do that. You need to do that as chair. Some other responsibilities that are not in the plan. You're the voice of the county Democrats. That means you should think back to one of the things Julia Buckner reminded us last night, is that you set the tone. You're the person who is going to really create the environment within your county party. So if you're defeatist and you think that no one can actually, that your county is unwinnable and that there's no hope for Democrats and that everything's going to get worse, that's what your volunteers are going to think. That's what other people in the county are going to think too. And it's not going to create the kind of organization that will really help encourage more people to participate. You also get to talk to the media. You're the person that folks are going to call when something happens in your county. So that can be both challenging and exciting, depending on your take on things. But you can be a great representative of the Democratic Party by talking to the media. And you should also be coordinating with your elected officials. So if there are votes that are coming up that are important to your Democratic elected officials, or initiatives that they're working on that they want to highlight, the county party can help get the word out about that. And it can help you make it easier to do the work that you need to do, because it's not just talking about electoral politics all the time. You're talking about the actual good work that folks who are elected Democrats in your community are doing. You're also the voice in good times and bad. which is it is very easy to be happy on election night when everybody wins. It is very difficult to be the voice of the party when things don't go the way you want. So you need to be prepared for those eventualities in your county. It's also when you're having a good day and when you're having a bad day that can reflect on the party. So if you're out with, if you have a very recognizable car and you're out illegally parking and cutting people off in traffic and driving around and being kind of wacky in that sense, that can reflect badly upon the county. So you don't have to censor yourself, but just think about what you're doing and how it reflects on your position sometimes. You're also going to be responsible for a lot of conflict resolution. And that means just in general, for folks who are new, everybody's going to bring you all their problems. If a chair and a vice chair in a precinct don't get along, they're probably going to come tell you about it. If you've got issues going on with an affiliate organization, they're probably going to come talk to you about it. And you will have to, you'll have to sift through a lot of that. And it's not always easy, but that's something that you're responsible for doing up to the point where it, if it becomes too difficult or too toxic, definitely reach out to other people about it. You don't have to do any of this by yourself, but people will bring a lot of problems and issues and questions to you, and you should be ready for that. No matter what organization you're a part of, your responsibility as a leader is to nurture other leaders. You don't want to end up in the position where you're the only person who can do things, or where you're the person that everybody is coming to for everything. You want your party to be broad and strong. You want people to feel empowered to do that and to grow as leaders themselves in their precincts or in whatever organization you're in. And leading by example and creating a welcoming community are two that go hand in hand. You want to welcome new people. You want to welcome people who have different viewpoints than yourself, who are members of our democratic family. This is things like, staying neutral in primaries is important for all the other things that we do. But personally not being too open about who you favor in a primary. Once you get back together after the primary, that means everybody who supported any one of those candidates feels more welcome in the Democratic Party. And that really all goes back to leading by example. The kind of community you want to have in your county or district, you're responsible for creating that. And that can also go back to, thanking people for being there, thanking people for participating, really acknowledging what people are doing and giving up in their participation in the party. So when I open it up, folks have questions about any of those things or want to chat about other things that you do that we haven't mentioned, we'll take a quick minute to take some other comments from people and maybe answer a couple questions before we move into the next couple slides. So what are some things you do that we haven't mentioned? You can just raise your hand. We'll call on you. And I see, I'm gonna actually look at the chat because I haven't been looking at it. So, okay, it looks like we've got a couple questions about the Board of Elections in the chat. So one of the major things that we do is that we appoint the folks the folks who are County Board of Elections members. That has its own section of the plan of organization. And it's the responsibility of the chair to make those suggestions to the County Board of Elections. I'm sorry, to the County Executive Committee. It's not our sole responsibility to manage that whole process. But it does have its own section in the plan of organization as well. All right, so let's go with Kathy Kirkpatrick.
Hey,
Kathy.
good
Hey.
morning. So
Good morning.
you talked about appointing a county attorney. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what that is and what that whole thing?
Sure. So your county party attorney is a person who's appointed to represent your county in any kind of legal matters. They think of them as an advisor who can advise you on any kind of legal matters that might come up. So it can be, my experience is that if you have an attorney that's got any kind of interest or background in elections law, that can be a great person. Because when someone has a question about whether the County Board of Elections is doing something legal, or whether a proposal that for some fundraising initiative that you have, whether it's within the bounds of campaign finance law, your treasurer might have some good inclination there, but a county party attorney might be a good person who can help you with that.
So just a quick follow-up. Is this somebody that we need to appoint now, or if we have a question, then do that?
You can appoint that person at any point in your term. They become an ex officio. They're a member of your county executive committee. So it's an official role that person would take in the party. But they can also be really helpful if there's council review petitions. If you have a headquarters and there's any kind of issue with a legal issue with the headquarters or something like that, having somebody in who's either a practicing attorney or a retired attorney, or someone who can appoint or who can kind of give you some of that legal guidance are great people who'd be great for that position.
And do they get paid for this?
That would be up to your county executive committee, but generally not, in my experience. Yeah. Okay, I see in the chat, we have a quorum to organize a new precinct. Are they considered organized since they were not able to meet quorum at their annual meeting? So Cindy, what you would do is that you would appoint a precinct chair to organize that precinct. They would have a meeting. And once they elect officers in a properly noticed meeting, then they become organized. So you can organize precincts any time of the year. Okay, Alicia.
Yes, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
In the remarks you just made, you mentioned about like after the primaries, we all supposed to come together and support those that won at the primary. If we have individuals that are over like our auxiliaries or our affiliated organizations, if they decide to take and support a write-in candidate because they didn't like it, even though for them they felt like, oh, well, I'm going to consider myself stepping away from my role while I outright do that. Is that part of like code of conduct, like they went against the POO and code of conduct, or is that correct that they can actually just say, oh, I know that you can do it for the primaries. Like if you are an officer and you want to be a campaign manager for a particular candidate, you can step down from your position and do that. But after the primary, I was under the impression it didn't matter what your role was, you cannot support a write-in based on the POO. So versus having to go through a complete grievance, what is something that we could do to make sure that those individuals know that they can't do that?
So I think part of that will come back to that environment of helping to foster a good environment at the county where everybody knows that no matter who they supported in that primary, they're welcome. But unfortunately, some people, if you've got somebody who says, I really just don't like the Democrat who won the primary, I'm going to spend my time helping, this unaffiliated candidate or a Republican candidate who's opposing the Democrat in that primary. That is one of the very explicit grounds for removal from a position in the plan of organization. So other than doing a little bit of mediation and trying to talk to them about it first, opposing Democratic candidates in the general election is one of the very straightforward grounds for removal from office for the plan of organization. So I hope that doesn't happen too much, but mediation can be helpful there.
And then one more, based on the answer you just gave the other lady, once they organize that precinct organized, do we put that in the vote builder? Do we add them to the vote builder?
Yep.
Do you know what the activist code is right off the top of your head?
So it would be 2021 through 2023 precinct chair under party officials.
But I'm saying the whole adding all 5 of the people.
So you'd have party, you'd have precinct chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer all have their different activist codes, and I can get you that after the meeting.
I know what those activist code is. I'm just trying to figure out how to put all 5 in to say that they met on that date.
there is a precinct meeting attendee activist code as well.
Okay.
So you can,
that's what I
you put
need.
that in, it's got the date, and then you're all set.
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, of course. We're going to go ahead and move on right now. We're going to have a couple other blocks for questions as we go through the training. But I want to make sure we're able to get through all the materials and get back down to questions at the end. So our next slide, one of the second responsibility that we talked about after being at the meetings, right? Running the meetings, running the show. The second responsibility is to draft a strategic plan. The exact wording in the plan of organization says that you will draft in consultation with your executive committee a strategic plan outlining reasonable political goals for the county. That's an incredibly important sentence. It's a very, but it's only one sentence in a giant plan of organization, but it's one of the most important responsibilities that we have as chairs. So like it is the most important responsibility after being there and running the meetings. So what does that actually mean? That's going to be the bulk of what we talk about for the remaining part of the session here is what is a strategic plan? Why do you need one? So why do I need a strategic plan? Number one, really it helps you actually plan out what you're going to do, which sounds pretty intuitive. But for those who are experienced chairs who've been doing this before, how hard it can be to get a whole group of people motivated to do something together. So having a plan that's written down that you've worked on with everybody, that you've agreed to, it helps create that kind of buy-in that you really want to have at the county level or at the district level. It also helps you be proactive. Again, for folks who are experienced, there are a million things that just sort of pop up. You could have, we could have natural disasters. We could have, last minute candidate changes. We can have, breaking news about a candidate or something like that. Or you could have somebody drop out of a key volunteer position. All of those are things that you're going to have to react to as a county chair, and having a plan doesn't change that. But having a plan gives you a basis to start from to let you have more proactive work. So you're not constantly bouncing around between all those different tasks that come up. And it helps foster more accountability in the party. So it's a way of helping you keep your other officers and yourself accountable. It's a way to help keep the precinct leaders accountable. If you're a district chair, it helps you keep your district or your county chairs accountable to what the plan is. But that's also a two-way street because it helps them have a way to keep you accountable to the things that you say you're going to do. So if there's initiatives that you say you're going to put into the plan and execute, it helps them know what to hold you accountable for. So what is a strategic plan? Well, I've just read that sentence. It outlines reasonable political goals. So the plan is great at giving us kind of guidance, but it definitely does not cover everything that we have to do. So, what is a goal? What is a reasonable goal? What's a political goal? Those are all questions I think people have when they read this sentence. And we're going to talk a little bit more about goals the next bunch of slides. And we just really love that Obama picture. Like, what is this? What is going on? So some examples of goals. We're gonna dive further into this, so don't be intimidated by the number of words that are on the slide. Specific goals can be things like we're going to meet X number of our new neighbors. We're going to make a certain number of phone calls, knock on a certain number of doors, get a certain number of emails from people. But you also want to have not just a task, not just something outlined that you're going to do. You want to know why you're doing it, right? And that's really what a lot of the strategic planning comes down to. It's like, why are we knocking on all of these doors? What are we going to actually do when we meet people? It's all about building capacity for the things that you want to do later in the election. So you're making more connections, you're meeting more people so that you can drop off more literature at people's houses, get more people to commit to voting, and you can get more voters turned out to the polls. Those are some examples of reasons why you would have goals, things that you want to do that to. You could also say, as a county, your goal could just be to have more year-round volunteers, right? So that you are a stronger party year-round, or that you have more organized affiliate organizations. That can be a goal, and that is just inherently beneficial to your Democratic family being stronger in your community. But a lot of the goals that we write focus on winning. We want to win more elections. We want to increase our turnout. And we want to make sure more registered Democrats actually come out to the polls. So next slide. So, you know, you can go crazy thinking about what all these different things are. It can be, you know, some people try and turn it into a house of cards type, you know, anybody's watched that show where there's, you know, plans within plans and schemes and all of these kind of things. But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that in depth. It doesn't have to be that, you know, there's no plots or, you know, anything crazy like that. But in order to understand if a goal is reasonable or not, you need to understand your people. You need to understand the county or the district or the precinct that you're working in. If you don't know how many possible volunteers you have in a precinct or how many Democrats you have in a precinct, you don't know what's reasonable for that precinct. If I said I'm in Buncombe County, if I said in Buncombe County, I'm going to knock on 400,000 doors, there are not 400,000 people in Buncombe County. That's not a very reasonable goal for me to set. If I wanted to, so you need to start by knowing who your people are and knowing who your Democrats are. So I want folks to raise their hand if you know how many Democrats, and this is a little bit, the folks whose counties are on this slide have an advantage here. But if you know how many Democrats in your county didn't vote in 2020, raise your hand. And we've got one hand up. We got a couple hands up. So a couple people looked into this data. This is stuff that we can know in North Carolina. So we can figure out, you can get from Vote Builder, how many Democrats in your county did not vote. So if you wanted to make a goal that was to get more Democrats to vote, that would help you figure out, what does that actually mean, right? How many more people is that really? It helps you figure out, you know, how many people are on the voter rolls who may have already moved away, or who may have passed away, or who may be a registered Democratic voter, but very unlikely to actually vote for Democrats. So all of that data is stuff that will help you make a better plan, and it's all available to you. So let's go to the next slide. I want to quickly plug, because I already did a little bit, Vote Builder. There is a Vote Builder training at 2:30 today from our data director at the state party, Emily Allen, and her one of the other Eve Clayton fellows, who will be talking about how to use Vote Builder. So we're not going to dive into it in depth here, but just know that that data is in a system that you all have access to just by being Democratic county parties, or district parties, or affiliate organizations. You all have access to it. So you can get data on who's registered to vote, what their addresses are, what some possible good phone numbers are for them. And then you're going to learn a lot more about how you'd actually use that data in Vote Builder, or how you get that data out of Vote Builder, how you can find data in Vote Builder in that training session. So I'm not going to go into all of it today. You'll learn more about it later. But one of the things that Vote Builder and the data can help you do is to make better turnout goals and contact goals for your counties. So as we talk about planning, the data that will inform your plan is typically presented in something called a crosstab. And folks may have not seen crosstabs before. You may have seen them and never heard them called that. But it's basically a grid of voters in your county, how frequently they vote, and how likely they are to vote. And they're presented in a couple of these different ways. But you typically see it in a grid like this. You've got folks who are strongly progressive on one side. You got folks who are strongly conservative on the left side. And then up and down from the top to bottom, you've got people who never vote, people who vote sporadically, people who vote all the time, and then people who are maybe new voters who don't have a voting history. So crosstabs can be really helpful to understand the voters in your county. So for example, everybody on here right now is in the I box down there. You are going to be very strongly Democratic voters. You're going to vote all the time. You all know people who are maybe in that F category, who are, they don't vote in the municipal elections. They generally vote in off years if they remember to. They tend to vote for the presidential elections. You also know people who are a little bit more in the middle. Those are the H categories. But when you talk about getting out the vote, which is a big thing that we focus on as a county, obviously, we're typically talking to the folks who are in the F, the I, and the L category, and the K, probably persuadable new voters. But it all depends on capacity. And understanding how many people fall in those different categories in your county will help you understand how many volunteers you need and help you understand whether your goals are reasonable or not. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to look at some actual examples of these from different districts. So this is a strongly Democratic district. This is Senate District 40, Joyce Waddell's district. You can see in the crosstab here, this is how it would actually come out of Vote Builder. So along the top of the screen, you've got your party support score. So that is how likely is this person to support Democrats. And it goes from 0 to 100, with higher numbers being more likely to support us. So consider people who are 70 and above, pretty strong Democrats. People who are 30 and below, pretty weak Democrats, strong Republicans. On the left-hand side, we have a turnout score. And this is how likely that person is to vote in any given election. It's also 0 to 100. So the people who are zeros on that scale are people who are registered voters who just never vote. People who are 90 plus are the people who vote in all of your primaries, all of your general elections, all of your municipal elections, every special election. This is why I say you all are down here in this bottom category. You're the strong support Democrats who are very likely to turn out to vote. So understanding the balance between these categories helps you figure out what your plan should be. And it's pretty good prediction. It's not set in stone that the districts are going to look like this, but when you see a district where you're starting off in this position, you don't need to go try and peel off Republicans to win this district, right? You don't need an outreach program to Republicans to win in that district. We go to our next slide. This is more of a swing district. So this is House District 98, John Bradford, which is formerly Christy Clark's district for this election. So you can see here, we're starting off in, if you were making a plan for this district, you would say, I have slightly fewer base Democratic voters than the Republicans have base Republican voters. So my plan needs to focus on trying to maybe reach out to some of these folks who are lower turnout Democrats and try and get them to turn out, whereas they wouldn't normally turn out. Or I might need to focus a little bit heavier on some of my folks who are in the middle, who are persuadable. I might need to do a little bit more persuasion. And you can see how that, in this district, if you spend all of your time talking to these 21,000 Democrats who are already going to vote, you're at a disadvantage. So you need to know this information when you're making your plans to help you figure out where you can make some gains. And we'll go to our next slide as well. This is my incredibly awful congressman in District 11, who I'm very disappointed to be represented by. But this is Madison Cawthorn in District 11. And you can see that the breakdown here is showing you, again, if you spend all of your time talking to the strong Democrats who are already likely to vote, who already don't like Madison Cawthorn, that is not necessarily going to be enough to overcome the strong Republican base that district has. So you need to shape your outreach pattern and all of the things that are going to inform your goals to help you reach out to maybe some of these Democrats who are less likely to vote, or to get more unaffiliated voters or more persuadable voters to support you. And this isn't looking at party registration. This is just looking at support scores and turnout scores. So what does all of that mean? I mean, we could just go through every district and talk about every crosstab, right? What does all of that really mean? It basically just means that no two districts, precincts, or counties are the same at all. Every precinct is going to have a different crosstab. Every precinct has different capacity, different data, different goals, different people. You may have two precincts that are, when you look at the precincts, they seem very similar from a numbers perspective. They might have completely different people who are interested in different things. So you need to do what's right for your county and what's right for your precinct. Crosstabs are good. That data is a good starting point for a plan, but it's not a crystal ball. It doesn't predict that that's exactly how the district's going to vote. It doesn't predict that, or it's not, set in stone. The work that you do can overcome any of those differences that you might see in there. But it's just a starting point to help you inform what you should be focusing on in your precinct. So just a couple examples of how no two precincts are the same. There's a couple spreadsheets that are going to be available to you after this training. This is a dashboard that the state party has put together to show you Democratic registration and turnout for every county in the last few major election years. So yeah, we picked Johnson County, and we can pick, let's pick 2020 as a year. So you can see, using this dashboard, you can just get a quick glance of how many Democrats are in each precinct in your county, how many were registered, and how many Democrats actually voted. So you can get Democratic turnout in all of these different precincts. So this is a good way, it's a good tool that'll be made available to everybody just to help you get those historical turnout numbers. So whether you're a district chair, a county chair, a precinct chair, if you want to get this data, you can get at it through this dashboard. Another tool that's going to be made available to folks is this, this spreadsheet, which is giving you Democratic turnout by precinct. And so you can look at the state, really, and you can filter down to different parts of the state and get that information about how many registered Democrats didn't vote in 2020, how many registered Democrats there were, things like that. So you can sort it by, you can filter it down to your county, you can sort it by turnout percentage and things like that. This will help you make those goals. So a small change in turnout can add up. That's something that we see on this chart as well. So, if you look at those numbers there for your county of, if you got 1% more Democrats turned out in every precinct, what would that add up to? It can give you quite a lot of votes depending on which precinct you're in. Some of the precincts in Mecklenburg, well, 1% increase in turnout would have won us jury basis race in a lot of places across the state, my county included. If we turned out 1% more of our Democrats, we would have won a Supreme Court race. So you don't have to set huge goals to have a big impact. But shout out to that precinct that Julia mentioned last night. There's one precinct that had 100% Democratic turnout. They have 9 Democrats. So for them, setting a higher Democratic turnout goal would not be a good goal because they already all turned out. So use the data that's at your fingertips to help you make some reasonable goals and help you understand your precinct a little better. A couple of good notes too is that this data is a little bit more comprehensive than what the Board of Elections can give you. It's going to be in the chat later. And county chairs should have gotten a county snapshot as well from Emily. Those should have been sent out. I can't remember if they were sent out before or after the county elections, but I'm going to make sure that we get that out again to all the new county chairs, because that presents a lot of this information for you about your county just in one place. Okay. Again, No two precincts and counties are the same. You are always going to be doing different work in different precincts to make sure that your county is meeting its goals. You don't want the state setting a goal for you necessarily. Your precincts may not all want the county setting a goal for them, right? You've got to actually collaborate and work with people, but no two precincts or counties are the same. So that brings us back around to strategic plans. So what actually are they? A strategic plan, and this is some stuff lifted out of the state's strategic plan, they start with a vision and a mission. So your vision statement gives people an idea of who you are as a party and what you value as a party. So you can read the one on there from the state party. Your mission gives people an idea of what you do and what you're focused on as an organization. So your vision and your mission both inform your goals as you draft a strategic plan, and they help you communicate your goals out to folks. So when you are talking to someone who's new and who's never, who's thinking about getting involved in your organization, and they ask, well, why do you do what you do? Your vision helps you give them that information. And it's also tied to the things that you've put in your plan that you say you want to do. You don't need to have, so there's 5 goals on this slide. You don't need to have just 5. You're going to have a lot more than 5. You can make as many as you want, but your goals are informed by your mission and your vision. So, what actually, we talked about the philosophical aspects of what a strategic plan is, but what are the actual tangible elements of a strategic plan? So the first thing you're going to want to have are goals. That's your broad primary outcome. So those are the things you want to achieve and why. Things like winning an election, having more consistent communication, having more volunteers, those are goals. Strategy is how you want to achieve that goal. It's the approach you take or what you're going to actually do to make it happen. So strategy can be, how you would actually go about winning an election. An objective is a step you take along the way to help you achieve that strategy. It's something specific you'll do to make that happen. And then a tactic is a tool that you use in pursuing that objective. So it's something that you actually do to help you meet an objective. So if we think about a county, hypothetical county, you have a goal of having a Democratic sheriff because you don't currently have a Democratic sheriff. Your strategy could be turning out more Democratic voters so that you can win the sheriff's race. An objective underneath that strategy could be to talk to more Democrats in lower turnout precincts to help bump up your participation. And then an example of a tactic would be holding canvassing weekends in the spring and summer of 2020 to talk about voting to those lower participation voters. So you've got a broad goal of the thing that you want to have, a strategy for how you're going to get there, specific objective that you want to meet to help you get there, and then a step along the way that you're going to take to help you achieve that objective. Here's another way to visualize what a strategic plan might look like if you laid it all out in a chart. If we were doing this in person, we could have some big Post-it note boards and throw Post-its up on there about sample strategies and objectives and things like that. This is just a different way to visualize the same thing that previous slide was showing. You can have more than one strategy per objective. You can have more than one tactic per strategy. And at the base of all of that is metrics. You need to have something measurable. So in my previous example, if I'm going to set up a plan for having a Democratic sheriff in 2020, I need to know how many votes I need to win that Democratic sheriff's race. I need to know how many votes the last Democratic candidate got. And I need to know to give me an idea of how much extra work I'd have to do to get to that victory. So they can also tell you how many doors do I need to knock on, and by what dates do I need to knock on those doors for it to have an impact. Those are all metrics that you can put into a strategic plan. But it's one thing to have a goal, and that's why the plan throughout says that you need to have reasonable political goals. And a good way to think about making goals reasonable, making goals achievable, is this term that's used in strategic planning that are called SMART goals. So it's one thing to have a goal, but like I said, they're not all equal. I could set a turnout goal for my county of 100% turnout, like the precinct in Terrell County that has 100% Democratic turnout. But for me in Buncombe County, I have some precincts with 4,000 voters. It's not really reasonable for me to expect that I can get from 70% turnout to 100% turnout in a single election, right? But I know that because I've been chair for a while. But how would you actually go about deciding that that goal is not reasonable? And SMART goals help give you a framework to follow. So what makes a goal SMART? It is a goal that is specific. So it's not just a generic thing will occur type of goal. It is specifically who's going to do a thing, what's going to happen, when is it going to happen, and why it's going to happen. So it can be, instead of just win an election, which election are you going to win, right? Why are you going to win that election? Things like that. Those are all part of making a goal specific. Measurable is what we just sort of talked about on metrics. So how much needs to happen for this goal? How many doors need to be knocked? How would you actually quantify a measure in that goal? Because you need to know where you are in terms of tracking progress to achieving that goal. Achievable is this actually possible, right? Or attainable rather, is this actually something I can achieve as a goal? Going back to my 100% turnout example, is that something I could actually do, right? Depends on a lot of things. How much money do you have? How many volunteers do you have? So a goal can be attainable on paper and it can look good, but as you go through that strategic planning process, you need to think about, can your organization actually get to that goal? Is it reasonable for you? If you have 10 consistent, reliable people who always show up, and your goal is to get to 500 people who consistently and reliably show up, and you want to do that in 3 months, that's probably a pretty big ask, right? You need to reach out to a lot of people to get that many consistent, reliable volunteers in that short a period of time. That might be too much for those 10 people that you have to do. So your attainable step is kind of figuring out whether or not that goal is something you can actually pull off. And then relevant is this something we should actually be doing? So you might have goals that are overlapping with other organizations in your county, or goals that are focused on things that are not aligned with your mission. Are those things you really want to prioritize? Are they things that are really important for you to do as a county party or for you to do as a precinct or district? That should be a consideration that you put into a goal. So, a good example is if you're trying to register more voters, you should be aware of the other organizations in your county that are also doing voter registration. And maybe, you want to temper your goal around how many people you try and register to vote, because other organizations are also doing the same kind of work. Things like that, right? That's, how relevant is everything in your goal to achieving your mission. And then time-based. You want to have a time frame for this goal to be completed by. Open-ended goals are much harder to keep people accountable to. They're much harder for you to keep top of mind. So you want to have a set time when that goal should be done. Doesn't have to be a specific date, like is here on the screen. You could say by, by the primary or by the general election, things like that. Specific dates are better in a lot of ways, but you should have some time element to it. So a couple of good goals are here on the slide. Registering 10,000 voters by October 5th. That's a specific goal. It's got a number in it. Depending on what organization you're with, it may or may not be attainable. Registering voters is definitely a thing we want to do. And it's got a date attached to it. So the other two goals on there as well, conducting 1 million phone calls. Again, whether or not that's attainable to your organization is up to your capacity. And a couple of other good goals that aren't on this slide, but are relevant to counties and district parties that aren't turnout goals would be something like, if you wanted to establish a monthly newsletter, an email newsletter to Democrats in your county by July 1st, right? That's a reasonable, that would be a smart goal. Growing your email list to 1,000 members by November 1st could also be an attainable goal. But really, it all depends on your organization, whether or not the goal is smart or not. An example of a goal that's not a very smart, that doesn't fall in this smart framework, would be have more money to win elections, right? That's not specific enough. How much more do you want in that goal? If you raise $5, technically you have more money. So have you attained that goal? That's the kind of thing that we talk about. You want to refine those goals down into something that's actually smart. From there, as you write some goals, how do you actually put them into a plan? And you're going to want to work as a team with your county on this. This is not something that you as the chair should be doing by yourself by any stretch of the imagination. You should be working with your officers. You should be working with your affiliate organizations. If you don't have chapters of affiliate organizations in your county, you should try and work with the state affiliate organization to see if there's things that you can put into your plan that would help you start more or get more engagement from folks in your county, or to make sure that there's not things in your plan that would alienate different communities. And you want to refine the plan as you go. You don't have to come up with a perfect plan right off the bat. In fact, you're not going to, your first draft at these goals may not be what you actually get approved. So, doing some of the work, thinking about it more, coming back to it, are all important parts of this planning process. They're living documents and they're going to change. The goals that we had for ourselves in 2020 all got changed by the pandemic. And it's just something you have to be able to roll with. But a really important part of getting county executive committee approval, because it's in the plan that says your county executive committee should approve your plan, is that you want to bring in your key precinct chairs, volunteers, some of your elected officials, if you have Democratic elected officials, and candidates maybe, to this process, and really make it collaborative so that when you present it to your county executive committee, it's not just the officer's plan that no one else has seen. You want to make sure that people are engaged in that process and that they're actually, they see themselves in that plan. You also want to make sure that you put in assignments to the plan as you're writing it, because it should not be, as we said on a previous slide, it's not the you show. It's not just your county officers doing the work. You might decide that in order to achieve a goal, you need to create a committee, and your goal can say that a specific committee will achieve this goal. And through the strategic planning process, you can help to define who might be on that committee and who might help get that goal, help move that forward. So getting county executive committee approval is an important part of that process, as it's including everyone else in your county. So before we jump into the next set of slides, we'll pause for a second, A, so I can drink a little water, B, so folks can ask questions that you have, because we've thrown a lot of information at you in the last 20 minutes there. So does anybody have questions? Okay, Coletta? You should be able to unmute yourself, Philetta.
Okay, yes. I think this is great information to have. However, my concern is making sure that the information is correct. You know, whether it's precinct chairs, the information is input correctly. So my question is there any, and this might be for another topic, but is there any way that the information, number one, as far as precincts is input daily or, you know, once a week or whatever, and compared to what the state has? Because at the end of the day, it affects everything that we do. If I say precinct number G20 is organized in Gifford County, but the state is saying, oh, no, it's not, you know, that's going to affect weighted voting at a county executive meeting. So what can we do about that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think helping to make sure, you know, that folks at our county level and at our district level, another plug for that Vote Builder training, you may not be the person in your county or in your district who's going to sit down and enter all the data into Vote Builder, right? You may not want to learn how to do that. You may not want to be involved in all of that.
Right.
But it's important that somebody do that. So I think for all of our counties, you know, we all, everybody who was on that session last night, it's not in Vote, if it's not in Vote Builder, it didn't happen, right? So making sure as part of your county plans that you're getting that information on officer changes, on newly organized precincts and things like that into Vote Builder, so that that other people have a record of what's going on in your county. But I think that's it's a good reminder for everybody that you know, getting the stuff into Vote Builder, having an accurate record of what's going on is important, not just for you, but it's important for the state. It's important for statewide affiliate organizations. It's important for everybody in the party to make sure we're accurately recording all that data.
Right. Yes. Okay. So is there a requirement for counties, you know, if I go out and organize a precinct on Monday, is it a time frame that that information should be input, or should that be part of the strategic plan to say, you know, if we get a precinct organized on Monday, the data should be input by Friday, or, you know, whatever the magic
Yeah,
tape.
that's a great question. So in the plan, the section that talks about precinct meetings, those results should be reported within 5 days. And reported means put in Vote Builder within 5 days. So that's in the plan of organization.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, of course. Elliot's got a question in the chat. Who do you suggest we share our strategic plan with? So I would share it with, and folks, we're gonna break for, we're taking questions here. It's a great time to get up, stretch a little bit. If you need to grab a little bit more coffee, we're almost through our slides, but it's a great time to do that now. Just a reminder to get up and move today as we're on Zoom all day. So Elliot asking, who do you suggest we share our strategic plans with? You would want to share them with anybody who's going to be responsible for executing part of the strategic plan should know. And if you're putting expectations on precinct chairs, you want to share it with all of them. If you're putting expectations on new committees that you're creating, you should make sure that the people who are going to be on those committees get to see the strategic plan. You should share it with your candidates, with Democratic elected officials. You might want to put a summary of it up on your website if you have one, but you don't want to put, you know, everything that you're doing in your strategic plan up on the website. So I would share it with anybody who's, you know, a key part of your Democratic family, and also, you know, just any Democrat who's really interested and wants to see what the party's doing. Be open to sharing it with them. Let me see if I've got any other questions in the chat that I missed. Ginger has a great point. County affiliate organizations can and should be included in execution and development of the strategic plan. So if you've got an African American caucus, LGBTQ caucus, Young Dems, Teen Dems, include them in the process. It doesn't have to be right off the bat, It doesn't have to be, you don't have to try and get everyone wordsmithing every part of the plan, but you do want to make sure everybody's got input and that everybody who's part of your Democratic family is involved. All right, Sam Edney, take our last question from you, and then we'll run through the rest of our slides. Transylvania County.
Thank you, Jeff. This question has more to do with the previous segment on the role of county chairs. We had a situation where we had 3 openings on a school board election.
Mhm.
We had 3 candidates, 1 pulled out, but that candidate pulled out after the ballots had been printed.
Mhm.
Not blaming anyone, but we didn't, that person ended up being a spoiler because they took votes away from our other 2 Democratic candidates. How should the county party have responded to that?
That's a great question about, some of the responsibilities that we don't tend to think about. So if that happens, your, get out the vote work should be helping voters understand that they would be throwing a vote away if they vote for the person who withdrew, right? Because that person is not going to serve on the board. So they, getting that messaging out there around the fact that that person is not going to take that office would be a great thing to do. Making more phone calls, changing literature if you need to, having more poll graders out in the field to get that information out to people are all good things that you could do. That's more of a reactive situation.
Right.
You just be reacting
right.
to that change.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks, Sam. All right, we got a few more slides to get through. We'll talk about a couple things that will be covered in a little bit more detail in a session this afternoon on the neighborhood cluster model, and then we'll come back and take some more questions. So what is a neighborhood cluster model? It's a way to help increase your capacity. So right now, we're in the middle of a super exciting training weekend. We've got all the time in the world to the election. We're gonna write our strategic plans. We're gonna get trained. We're gonna recruit volunteers. We're gonna register all the voters. Every precinct's gonna be 100% organized. We're gonna win every election, 50% plus 1 of the votes. Everything's gonna be great. The only resource you can't get more of in an election is time. You can always get more money from somewhere. You can find more volunteers, but you can't get more time. So if we hit our next slide, anyone know what that number would represent? October 12th, 2022, 27. You can drop it in the chat. You can unmute yourself. What's that?
Start of early voting.
Not quite. It's close. It's 27. Lynn's got it in the chat. 27 days till election day is October 12th. The start of early voting will be October 20th. So early voting in 2022. But October 12th will be 27 days from election day. So right now we think we've got 17 months to figure all this out, right? What do you want your party to look like on October 12th? Is a great way to think about your plan. So where do you want to be a little over 3 weeks from the election, right? That's a week before the start of early voting, roughly. It's 2 days before the voter registration deadline. Where do you want your party to be on October 12th? So try to anticipate what things are going to look like then. And think about what place you want to be. So if you think about all the goals that you have, right? You want to register voters, and persuade volunteers, you're going to recruit, persuade voters, recruit volunteers. Those specific goals to win the election might require you to have 1,500 doors that you're knocking on a single weekend. It might require you to make, 1,800 phone calls, or recruit 25 more volunteer leaders in a day to help you actually do the things that you need to do to win that election. And there's a rhetorical question on here. Can you do this by yourselves? that you're going to make 1,800 phone calls in a week? Are you going to go knock 1,500 doors on a weekend by yourself? It's a lot of doors. Anybody who's, if you're canvassing giant apartment buildings, you still can't do it. But the model of a neighborhood team gives you a way to distribute that work out amongst a larger group of people. So let's say your goal was that you wanted to knock 250,000 doors, right? Way too many doors for you to do by yourself, way too many doors for you and a couple people to do together. You need to break that up into different groups. And I want to recognize 250,000 doors is a lot for most of our counties to try and do. There's only a couple counties that might have a goal that high that would be reasonable. But you need to break that up into different groups. And the neighborhood teams model of setting up people who are closer to the individual voters can help you make this work more achievable. So we think about, say we wanted to knock 250,000 doors as a state, right? And we have 100 counties. So if each county has 5 teams of people, and each team has 10 volunteers, and each volunteer knocks on 50 doors, that gets you to that 250,000 doors. It's much more attainable if you break a goal down and you structure something like this. So if you think about your county or your district, if I have 80 precincts in my county. If I wanted to knock on 10,000 doors in a weekend, it's much harder for me to say, as a county party, I'm going to go out and recruit 1,000 volunteers, and we're going to give everybody packets, and we're going to do all of this work ourselves. It's much easier for me to work with my precinct chairs, to work with some neighborhood captains, and say, here's the work that you need to do. Here's the small chunk of work that you need to do. And you break it down that way. Because when you ask a precinct to do a little bit of work to help meet a larger goal, it helps to motivate them. And it helps you as an organization really break that work down into achievable chunks. So the neighborhood team model is one way to help you do that. And there's a session later this afternoon that's more of a breakout on exactly how the state party can help you organize neighborhood teams in your county or your district or in your affiliate organization, and exactly how those teams can all work together. But the core idea of it is that the more attachment, the closer your volunteers are to the voter on a more regular basis, the better that interaction is going to be. If you've got volunteers who are doing this all year round, and it's that person coming back to a voter's door for a second or third time in the year when it's time to get out the vote, as opposed to someone they've never seen before, it'll be more impactful for them. So there's a session later this afternoon that goes more in depth on how you can build out a neighborhood team program in your county. But it's one thing to think about when you sit down to plan all the things you want to do. It may seem like it's too much to do as just your county, but there are strategies and there's a lot of data out there to help you meet these goals. So it's really, we said, you need a team. You need a team in strategic planning. You need a team in voter contact. You need a team in every neighborhood in your county. Really can't do it by yourselves. And you and your officers will be overwhelmed if you try and do everything yourselves. So you absolutely need a team. So we have a question slide. And we have a reminder. So Ben, if you skip to the next slide. So there's going to be a survey that'll go out to folks after the trainings. It's going to be important, please fill that survey out. Please let the training team know what other kind of trainings you want, what other things are interesting to you, what other things, if there's anything specific around strategic planning that you think would be helpful, if this is too much information, too little information, all that kind of stuff, but it'll all be really helpful. But I want to say thank you all, everybody, for joining. And we're going to jump back up to the question slide, and we're supposed to end at 11. but there's not another session that runs right up against this one. So we can take questions for a little while if folks have them. But thank you to all of you, 40 some people here who are participating in this process. Really excited that you all are here. So let's go with Rebecca. We're going to go into questions. Rebecca Brock, Harnett County.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. It's been incredibly informative, but I do have one question about the primaries, and that is, besides the Democratic slate card that we can hand out to any Democratic voter, can we also hand out information for the candidates as well? What if we created a small 2-page sheet that just outlined every candidate's platform? Is that a possibility?
So you could do that for the primary if you wanted to. You're also going to have candidates that are there with their own volunteers. So the one thing you might politically that might get difficult there is if some campaigns are not able to recruit volunteers, and then you're out there handing out literature that has their names on it. Some of the other campaigns might get upset. But I think as long as you're handing out literature that has everybody's name, and say, you know, we just want you to vote for one of these people, we'd welcome you into the party. Another great thing to do if you're planning to do something like that for the primary is to also try and, you know, when people are on their way in, you don't want to do much to you know, slow them down or anything like that. But when people are on their way out, being really thankful that they're voting, thank them for participating in the process. That's a great place to have a clipboard to sign people up for emails, you know, volunteer forms, things like that. It's a great place to catch some of your most active Democrats and people you might not know.
I was also going to add, I would make sure that stuff you hand out is objective. I know that there is a few counties that were wanting to do like scorecards for the 2020 primary. So it's like, oh, if you care about environmental issues, this is the ranking of the candidates. And, you know, like, you can't objectively rank those kind of things. You can't say like, oh, this candidate is objectively the best. So just make sure everything you hand out is make sure everything you hand out is objective. It's not subjective like rankings and stuff like that. Like, it is just, here's what they say, not like, I think this one's the best for healthcare and I think this one's the best for students.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Great point, Ben. Thanks for making that. All right. Sharon Johnson.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks so much. This has been great. You know, we've, I believe it was last week, we rolled out the concept of neighborhood captains in an effort to assist our precinct chairs. And you had mentioned that there was going to be a session this afternoon specifically for the model that you all will present. When is that session and who's instructing that one, so I can make sure we're in that particular session?
Yeah, good. So I'm glad you already started on that process. So if you look at the agenda on Socio, there's a neighborhood cluster model session at 4:30 this afternoon. That's as part of the breakouts. And
okay, and that's 4:30.
4:30 this afternoon, and Julia Buckner is the instructor on that one.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course. Okay. Any other questions? All right, Lahoma, go ahead. We just need to get you unmuted.
Hey, Jeff, great information, even for those of us who've been around the block a few times. So thank you so much. I want to know about, you know, we have a lot of candidates now reaching out to us, right? I'm not even going to talk about the municipal race. Let's talk about next year. So I have a lot of candidates reaching out for us. Some of the candidates are more, you know, well-known than others. How do we be respectful of all of the Democrats? Let's talk about the Senate seat, for example, contacting us, wanting to come to our party to speak. You know, again, some of them are more high profile than others. They have more resources than others. Have you been reaching out to the candidates that you're not hearing from? Or are you just kind of going with the people who have the resources to get your attention right now? And then, you know, some of the candidates have endorsements already from, you know, officials, top officials. So how would you recommend that we as county chairs continue that kind of open, inclusive platform when we clearly have some of the candidates who are, you know, more heavy hitters and are coming with heavy endorsements, et cetera, able to get our attention more than others?
That's a great question. And I think that, you know, one of the responsibilities of the chairs that we talked about earlier in the presentation is on, you know, working with elected officials and candidates. You know, you're kind of that focal person for the county. Personally, I do try and reach out to folks that I haven't heard from. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, not chasing people down. You know, we try and reach out. We want to make sure that they, you know, because sometimes folks who are first-time candidates or who've never done this before don't know that they can ask to come to a meeting, or they don't think to reach out to the county chairs. They don't think to reach out to us because they're just not as familiar with the structure. So reaching out, letting them know that you're a forum that's open for all the candidates, letting them know they can reach out to you or they can attend a meeting, things like that. Those are important. And I think it's, I think that's a great way to help, you know, because even if a person is not, you know, it's not the strongest candidate or not, you know, the most well-known candidate, there's going to be people in your county who support them. So making sure that that those people see that you're making that effort to reach out to the candidates that they might support, and also to welcome them in as people who might support those candidates. So I think it's a great way to balance it, is just to make sure you're reaching out and make sure if you're, you know, if you hold an event that is with a specific candidate, make sure at that event you mention that there are other, you know, other candidates that are going to have other events and how people can make sure they're signed up to attend those as well, just so you don't create that impression that you're only favoring one candidate. But that's a good question. We're gonna have a big crowded Senate primary, and I've got 6 candidates for Congress in this district already. So we'll see how many more we have by the end. But I want to say huge thanks to the training team for putting all of this together over the next, you know, the rest of the day. Last night, Julia and the team have put together just some amazing resources, and I'm really grateful that Ben has been on to help with the technical aspects, but also, you know, as we went back and forth with crafting the training out, figuring out everything that needed to be in the slides, talking about everything. We got, you know, we're very fortunate to have all the organizing fellows we have, and I'm so grateful that Ben was on this with us, working on this process. And y'all, if you don't know your organizing fellows yet, get to know them in your districts because they're a great resource for all of us. So thank you, Ben. Thank you, Anthony, for being here as well, our other fellow who was here on the call with us. And thank you to the 40+ folks who joined for the training. So I am happy to stay on and answer more questions if people have them specifically, but we're a few minutes over 11, so I think we can end the official part of it and then just kind of keep the Zoom open. Ben, you got any other thoughts you want to add before we stop the recording?
Make sure you guys go to those breakout sessions. You can specialize in everything that you need to know. I've had so many questions while I've been an organizing fellow that I was like, man, if only we had started these kind of training sessions in January, all these problems would have been solved. So this is a great place to get as much knowledge as you need. Some stuff you may not think you need to know, but you'll need to know in the future. I never thought I would have to use MailChimp, and I had to make a MailChimp account like a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, man, you know, I'm happy there's a training session for this because this is something that I'm going to be using a lot more in the future that I don't know much about. So just try to soak up as much knowledge as you can get this weekend, because all of it's going to be super relevant in the future.
Awesome.
Oh, and if I can add something really quickly, one thing that I'm seeing a lot in the chat is a lot of people asking, if we're gonna have resources available on a lot of stuff that we're seeing. And yes, all of this stuff should be available in Socio under documents correctly. So definitely take a look at that and get your resources.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of resources on Socio. That's great. Great to point out. And I know it's a new platform for everybody. So if you have trouble finding like slide presentation or other resources or things like that in there, you can just ask questions. We'll help point you to that information. So again, huge thanks to everybody. We'll stick around and take any questions that y'all have for a few more minutes. Want to make sure everybody's able to get to the next session, which won't be until I think it's 12:30, right, Ben? Is the lunch session? Okay.
I think it starts a little bit before that.
Okay.
Yes. Everything on Socio, it's amazing. I wish schools use stuff like this. Make it so much easier to track my classes.
All right, Liz, you got a question? Chatham County.
Hey there, I kind of have a question and a statement. We are very fortunate here in Chatham County that one of our precinct chairs, Nancy Jacobs, who was initially on the call, but looks like she dropped off. Nancy has worked really hard to create a mature neighborhood coordinator program in her precinct, and it is being leveraged now across a variety of our other precincts. The challenge we have is in the western part of our county where it is extremely rural. Nancy has, so that's an area where if anybody has any suggestions, we are extremely open to. We did find a group that some of you probably have heard of in the western part of the state called Down Home, who seems to be doing a lot of grassroots organizing in rural areas. So we're trying to leverage what they're doing. But anything, any suggestions that anybody has to do kind of a neighborhood coordinator program in those more rural areas is much appreciated.
Yeah, I think it's exciting that you've got a great program off the ground. I think the one thing I see Down Home and other organizations that do rural organizing do well is that they're meeting people where they are on issues and meeting people, where they are, period. And, taking time to go door to door and canvas and really listen. And I think that, issue-based work in, I hear this from some of the parts of Western North Carolina that are, more rural than Buncombe, and even some of the rural parts of Buncombe. When I go into, when we go out into the Lester and Sandy Mush corner of Buncombe County, everybody thinks Buncombe is just Asheville, but there's some pretty rural pockets. And when we did food drives out there, and we've done different kind of, supporting community centers, not, as Democrats, but not raising money for ourselves, raising money for community centers and things like that. You hear people say, I didn't realize there were Lester Democrats. I didn't realize there were Democrats in Sandy Mush, and they start to talk to each other and they start to get more engaged. So that might be a way. It doesn't help with the structure is going to look a little bit different, right? Because you might have phone trees versus door knocks in rural counties or in rural parts of the county, because it might be harder to, go door to door in all those areas. But, getting your foot into the door by showing people that we are members of every community. We're members of every part of the county, and we care about everything that's going on in every part of the county. It's a good place to start. I'm curious if other people have thoughts, throw them in the chat. But thanks, Liz, for that question. All right, we got other hands up from Sharon and Kathy. So Sharon, we'll go with you first.
I want to kind of follow up on, I don't know if it was Lacoma or not, but I have an upcoming meeting with my auxiliaries. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is trying to get ready for the primary and managing auxiliaries' preference to candidates when we're supposed to be neutral. My plan is simply just to remind them of their responsibility in terms of during the primary, not to, particularly the leaders of this auxiliary, of these auxiliaries. And that's all that I can do. I don't, for instance, if an auxiliary has one Senate candidate come in with no intentions of any others, do I have to make that right by ensuring that they have the other candidates in? How far do we go? And I think that's what she was talking to, and it's the challenge. I mean, it happens a lot in our municipal elections, but particularly with the heavy number that's running for Senate.
Mhm.
Your input.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I see Jane in the chat saying they have the same issue in Mecklenburg. So if you've got affiliate organizations that are engaging in that kind of behavior, obviously talking to them and trying to encourage them to be open to other candidates. But there are, there's going to be some natural preferences, I think, in some cases where you've got, if you have a candidate running who's 22 years old, right, your Young Dems group might want to just naturally get more excited about that candidate. If you have a candidate who's an out LGBTQ member of the community, the candidate, the affiliate organization might just generally be more excited around that candidate. And, I think that's, as long as they're, not out trashing candidates and stuff like that in the primary, I think that kind of stuff is, to be expected. And if you think it's difficult, talking to the auxiliary president or the affiliate organization president for your county, and maybe bringing in the state level affiliate organization just for some guidance on their own bylaws. But they do have, the Democratic women's groups may have preference to letting Democratic women candidates speak, and I think that's okay. And it's difficult sometimes, but as long as everybody's, all the affiliate organizations are committed to supporting the Democratic nominees after the primaries, that's part of their bylaws that get reviewed. So they can be sometimes difficult conversations to navigate, but I would start with, they don't necessarily have to, they should be open to everybody. You can make that suggestion that they be open to everybody to speak, but ultimately those local affiliate organization chapters report to their state organizations first and then to us, or then they work with us, but they report to their state affiliate organization. So talking to the state affiliate organization leadership is a good step as well.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Of course. All right, Kathy Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, mine is just a quick question about timing. You said the next session starts before 12:30, but I had 1 o'clock.
It is 1 o'clock. My sheet is we have to get on 30 minutes early. That was my bad. I looked at it immediately after. It's like, wait a minute. So sorry about that.
Give an old woman a heart attack. I just want you to know.
All right, yeah. So we will cut this off in a few minutes. Thank you, Kathy, for that question, for the clarifying. Yeah. So the How to Democrat in the World of Trump session starts at 1 p.m. for everybody who's not involved in running it. So, all right, Meredith Bailey, you got your hand up, Rockingham County.
Hey, so going back to conflict resolution, do you have any recommendations for a new chair or programs for conflict resolution where we're having some issues integrating and we're having some long timers having some difficulty with some of our newer executive committee members and some of the changes that we're trying to implement and as we've seen on Zoom calls in the last year, things happen, but I've actually seen back chatter in front of the entire membership criticizing some of our executive committee members, and I don't know the best way to handle that. So if you have any recommendations about conflict resolution programs, or I don't think it needs to be full-blown mediation, but I'd really appreciate how to handle stuff like that.
Yeah, I took a note because I don't have, and that's a great question. I don't have any specific recommendations for programs, but I'm going to ask around for some, maybe some organizations that do an online training on how to do conflict resolution. I spent a lot of time working in retail and just got a lot of conflict resolution from wanting the person in front of me to stop yelling at me. That's what ended up being, is how you de-escalate a situation. There are ways to do it though that are much more intentional. And I think as someone who got engaged with the party in my 20s, there is a natural tension between folks who are coming in with new ideas and different ideas and folks who have been doing it a particular way for a particular amount of time. So I can definitely sympathize with that. I think one thing that does help is, as the leader, setting that expectation that we're all on the same team, right? Like everyone is trying to move in the same direction. If people have different ideas about how to get there, let's talk it out, let's have discussions. But at the end of the day, people need to, respect that we're all moving in the same direction. We're all trying to meet the same goals. So I'm going to look into some, maybe reach out to some other folks on the training team and see if anybody has some good suggestions for good conflict resolution programs. But I'm happy to talk more with you offline about the specific, specifically what's going on, see if we can chat through some possible solutions too.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Meredith. All right, Kathy, did you have another question or did I just not put your hand down?
No, my hand just didn't get put down. I'll do
Okay,
it.
great. Great. All right, folks. Well, thank you all so much. Big shout out again to Ben and Anthony and for the work helping out with the session and putting slides together, all the work the training team's done to put all this together. I'm so glad the state party is doing this. I'm really glad to be a part of it. And I'm appreciative that you all were here, stuck with us 17 minutes past our end time to hear some more questions and hear some more information. So thank you all so much. We'll see y'all on future trainings. You can get the slides on Socio, and there's going to be a lot of other details on Socio later in the day.